Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Bitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend the state of Israel. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in to this briefing. It's a great privilege to be joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF. General, thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure.
General, maybe we can start off. This week was a very unique, powerful week here in Israel with Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. Maybe we can start off and you can just share your thoughts about how the week was. What was Yom HaAtzmaut like this year in Israel with everything going on?
Well, maybe I'll start with Yom HaZikaron. Usually, we officers in Memorial Day and Yom HaZikaron, we visit the families of our fallen soldiers. And there are families that I've been visiting every year, something like 20, 25 years. Families that I've known for many, many years. But this year, obviously, was very, very different. So many fallen soldiers. This year, I visited two of our generals that lost their sons in the war. Brigadier General Dedi Simchi, whose son Guy was at the party, the Nova party, and he saved more than 30 kids. He fought terrorists for hours with his bare hands, with no weapons, a real hero. Every day we hear another story of people he saved in the party. And he died in Kibbutz Re'im. And his father, Daddy, he knew that his son was killed in Re'im and they couldn't reach the body. He drove to Re'im. He found a unit that actually, Harov battalion, that he actually commanded many, many years ago. And he said to them, you know, I commanded your unit in the past. I need your help. I want to reach my son's body. And they went in and found him. And a very sad story. So I visited in Gedera Dedi, and also Brigadier General Sheli Moshe, who I've known for many years. He was the commander of the battalion I commanded later on, Battalion 605, Combat Engineers. I was his deputy when he was battalion commander, and later I was his deputy when he was commander of the whole Corps of Combat Engineers. His son, Ben, he was a major in 669, the Special Operations Air Force Unit, and he was killed in northern Gaza. Amazing kid, which I've known since he was born. It's very hard for the family, very hard to cope with this loss. Every family deals with this differently. So this Yom HaZikaron for everybody was very hard. And in Yom HaAtzmaut, obviously all the municipalities did a different celebration, much more modest. People celebrated, but it felt like, I would say, a more sad celebration. I mean, it's very important to celebrate and be happy about our independence. I mean, you know, we have to take things in proportion. Since the independence war, since the beginning of Israel, and even a bit before, we lost 25,040 soldiers and people who served in other security units. 25,000. It's a lot. It's not 6 million. I mean, 25,000 is maybe what we lost in a week in the Holocaust. So we have to understand what's the difference between having our own state and the ability to defend ourselves by ourselves, and what it means to be stateless and being butchered by our enemies with no ability to defend ourselves. So in this context, we understand that even if we are experiencing a difficult time, we are not in the Holocaust, and we are in a different situation today, being able to really defend ourselves against our enemies.
Thank you, General. Let's jump into an operational update. What can you share with us in terms of the IDF in Rafa right now?
One of the things that got the people really puzzled, and also I saw it in international media in my many interviews, is what's going on in the north of Gaza. I mean, the IDF operated there, conquered all of northern Gaza, destroyed the brigade and the battalions, and now we find ourselves again fighting in Zaytun, an operation which we finished yesterday, and in Jibalia. So I talked to the guys on the ground, and it turns out that we estimate that in northern Gaza now, there are around 500 remaining terrorists. 500, there were more than 10,000. So we are destroying them. But obviously, each time the remaining terrorists try to regroup, there are pockets of terrorists that need to be dealt with. And this is what the IDF is doing, waiting to see where they are regrouping and attacking them fiercely. And we are constantly degrading their capabilities, killing the terrorists. And there will be a moment when really we'll reach a level of destruction of this terror infrastructure that will really make people understand and feel how successful is what the IDF is doing. The IDF started also operating in East Rafah. This is not yet a full-scale ground incursion in Rafah, but definitely we are seeing how we are moving forward and bringing more and more forces to Rafah, and eventually I believe that we'll see also the forces taking over Rafah city, and this will be a really game changer in this war.
Is the slower pace in Rafa, that's an IDF operational decision, or is that because of larger international and US pressure right now?
I think it has to do a lot with the pressure. We are going to release a letter from IDSF really explaining to the administration professionally why Rafah is crucial. All the leadership of Hamas is there, the hostages are there, the remaining brigade of Hamas is in Rafah, and also the ability to close the Egyptian border and prevent any future buildup of force. Everything depends on Rafah. So this is why it's so important for us to go. Saying to us not to go to Rafah is basically saying to Israel, lose the war. We're not going to lose the war. We have to destroy Hamas. We have to bring back the hostages. We have to close this border. We have to destroy the last brigade of Hamas that has remained. And this is something I think that the government is conveying to the administration, and step by step, I think this understanding is growing. We saw suddenly President Biden talking about additional $1 billion aid to Israel. I believe that there is a beginning of an understanding that really going against Israel's security, most basic security needs, is not good. It's even not good for elections. And I think that we'll see in the coming days and weeks a change in the approach of the administration. We saw also all the talk about, and I said it all along, all the talk about how difficult it will be to move the Gazans out of Rafah. In 1 week, 500,000 left. No effort was needed there. So this is not an excuse saying that there is a problem with the citizens. They evacuated Rafah very fast. And in this sense, I think the IDF can continue the operation.
Now, thank you to all of our viewers who sent in questions. We very much appreciate them, and it allows us to guide these interviews. In general, one of the questions that we're still getting up until right now is how the withholding of the munitions by the US is directly, if at all, impacting the operations in Gaza. And I know we've discussed this last week. Do you have anything to share this week in terms of that issue?
So I can say, generally speaking, that in a large-scale war, munitions is always an issue, always. And you always feel you don't have enough, and you have to manage this. And you cannot just shoot as many munitions you want everywhere. It doesn't work like that. So obviously, if there is no continuous flow of munitions, this requires planning. But talking specifically about Rafa, and even talking about a war in the north, Israel has all the munition it needs. A part of that, since the 7th of October, the Israeli industries have been working 24/7 and building step by step the ability to produce the munitions Israel needs. It's not something that happens in a day. It takes a long time to build this capability, but every day that passes, the Israeli industries are managing to produce more and more capabilities, and this will go and get stronger and stronger and stronger as things proceed. But having said that, of course, it's important for us to get all the assistance we need, all these $14 billion that were approved, and now the additional billion. This is crucial for Israel to sustain a long war, and it is going to be a long war. In the south, in the north, possibly with Iran. It's definitely a big, big war, an historical one. We have to deal really with all our enemies and win decisively. And munitions are part of this really campaign that we need to deal with.
So there are reports coming out that Sinwar is not in Rafa, but potentially still in Khan Yunis, and likewise reports coming out that the U.S. has intelligence more so than what Israel has, and they want to share that intelligence with Israel, who's lacking that. What are your thoughts on this in terms of the intelligence that Israel has on the whereabouts and everything happening, the need for the Israeli intelligence community to rely on external sources?
So I don't know where Sinwar is. I'm not sure, and I don't know if the U.S. has more accurate intelligence than Israel and on what's going on in Gaza, at least. But I would say this: Israel always shares the intelligence we have, whether it's threats on Europe, whether it's threats on the U.S. And we have saved many, many, many lives around the world by sharing the intelligence we have. And obviously, I think we expect if the U.S. has relevant intelligence for the war to supply it to Israel to give us what we need in order to be more effective. So if the U.S. has intelligence, I would expect them to give Israel this intelligence and assist us in the war, and not condition it. Don't condition intelligence in the middle of a war. And so we'll see. I think the coordination between Israel and the American army and the intelligence forces is very, very close with the CIA, with the military intelligence, and I hope it will continue to be close.
Thank you. Let's, if we can, talk about other regional partnerships. Jordan recently just blocked an attempt by Iran to smuggle in weapons. So can you share a little bit about the Jordan-Israel relationship, and then also Egypt? How are things doing with Israel and Egypt?
So overall with Jordan, we have to differ, and also with Egypt, between what are really the relations and the talk between the governments and the military and so on, and what is said in the media. In both societies, There is a lot of extremism. In Egypt, a third of the society is Muslim Brotherhood. Also in Jordan, Muslim Brotherhood is very dominant. There is a lot of pressure from the society to be against Israel. So most of the Jordanians and Egyptians, to keep legitimacy towards their own societies, they tend to speak very harshly against Israel, and they portray themselves as maybe even to a certain extent anti-Israeli, but they know they rely a lot on Israel. I mean, Jordan's ability to defend its air depends on Israeli air defense, Israeli water. They are reliant on Israeli gas. They are reliant on U.S. aid. So obviously this creates a lot of dependency, and they are afraid of Iran. They're afraid that Iran will take over. I can say that when I was a pupil in the School of National Security, we visited the King of Jordan, in the palace. He talked to us like 45 minutes about one thing, Hezbollah. This is what he was worried about. Why there is a need to deal with Hezbollah? Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. So this is something that really, really worries all Sunni countries, Iran, Hezbollah. So they're trying to fight this attempt of Iran to influence more and more Jordan. Egypt is even a more complex issue because the Egyptians have been really mistreated by the administration. Mubarak was a long-term friend of the U.S., and when the Arab Spring started, U.S. administration at Obama's time sided with the people who were rioting against him. And then later on, when Assisi did a military coup and threw out the Muslim Brotherhood, which was really good that he did so, also the administration said, you have taken control militarily of Egypt, so you are the bad guy and the Muslim Brotherhood are the good guys, which doesn't make sense. So Egyptians have been getting closer to Russia, getting closer to China. This is not good. It's not good news. And the US really needs to think how they keep Egypt on the Western side and not have them shifting sides, because if Egypt shifts sides, this can be devastating for the Israeli-Egyptian relations.
Do you think that Israel can expect to see any partnership in the Sinai Peninsula with Egypt if Hamas tries to escape through that corridor?
So talking about the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt has dealt for a long time with the dominance of ISIS in the Sinai Peninsula. ISIS has attacked many Egyptian forces, and they couldn't cope with it, so they asked Israel help. I wanted to help the peninsula on our border near Eilat. So Israel for a long time has been providing the Egyptians with accurate intelligence and even assisting them militarily inside the Sinai Peninsula. So their cooperation is really close on the military level and intelligence. Israel is also supplying Egypt with gas. Egypt is very dependent on Israeli gas and is dependent on American aid. So I'm not sure how much Egypt can really try and hurt these relations. But when the administration is pressuring Israel not to go to Rafa, then the Egyptians become emboldened also and they mistreat Israel. I'm hoping that we manage to really continue the coordination with them and ease things in this border.
On the northern front in Israel, there were more than 60 rockets launched from Hezbollah all the way to Meron, which I think is about 9 kilometers from the border. Is this signaling an increase in Hezbollah activities right now?
There is no major change with Hezbollah. I think that Israel is challenged with two things that are more challenging. One is the UAVs, the drones they are sending. We need to, in my opinion, to bring some more cutting-edge technologies and capabilities we have in our industries, which we are actually selling to other countries and we're not using at the moment against Hezbollah. We need these technologies that are suited for dealing with drones. And one thing that really is challenging Israel is the anti-tank missile shooting, which is a major challenge. And it seems at the moment that without really a ground incursion into South Lebanon, we're not able to stop this anti-tank missile shooting, including an Israeli citizen that was killed yesterday in one of these incidents.
So are you able to elaborate on that a little bit, that Israel has developed technology and sells it to other countries, but yet does not use that very technology here? What is the holdup? Why wouldn't that be so obvious to deploy that?
It's a matter of money, purchasing. I mean, Israel develops a lot of very, very sophisticated technologies. The military industries, I would say that 80% of what our military industries produce is for export. Other countries buy our technologies. So in certain occasions, you have a situation where another country purchases really, really advanced capabilities that Israel itself hasn't purchased from its own industry. So really it's a matter of investing the funds to purchase the technologies.
So is it possible then that Israel is indirectly aiding the enemies with the proliferation of their equipment and we're lacking it?
No, we're not selling to countries that will proliferate technologies, but we are selling high-end technologies to different countries. And the process of who to sell to, there is a very clear process how the country approves what weapons can be sold to who.
While we're on the topic of equipment, I want to ask you a question also that we get so often, and you've addressed this a lot, about the lacking of equipment for IDF soldiers. There are, so many fundraising campaigns in the U.S., and good-meaning Jews and Christians in the U.S. are raising millions of dollars because they're being told that the IDF does not have life-saving equipment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that what happens is that, the army purchases for hundreds and thousands of soldiers. Usually they purchase and this equipment can sit like 10, 15 years waiting to be used. When it's used, it's not a very new equipment. So you have some units that have very new equipment, and others, the equipment has been sitting for a very long time. So when the war started, everybody wants the newest equipment, the best one. So everybody is demanding to get the same equipment. The army is not built to give everyone the same equipment. And then we see a lot of purchasing. And also sometimes the army doesn't buy everything that is needed. They're always in lack of budget. And unfortunately, a lot of times the army prefers to use the budget for new technologies and capabilities, a bit disregarding the less, I would say, sexy things like helmets or vests or shoes or munitions. it's not exciting to buy shoes, trousers, or helmets. Much more exciting to invest in new technologies and cyber, I don't know. Then you find yourself in a situation that you lack readiness, whether it's munitions or private or equipment for soldiers and so on and so on.
But presumably those calculations are what is in the best interests of the overall army. So if they spend money on cyber, it's not because they want to risk the soldiers, but because they think more cyber would presumably in the long run protect more soldiers.
So yes, but at the end of the day, you need to balance. You need to balance between how much you invest in the people themselves, education, motivating them, building leadership, and so on. How much you invest in their everyday life and logistics, what kind of rooms they have, how the bases look, what kind of food they eat, and so on. How much you invest in training, what quality of training you provide and training areas and so on. How much you invest in equipment and readiness, and then how much you invest in building new capabilities. And the Army very much likes to invest a lot in new capabilities, not always balancing all the other things, taking care of human resources, training, equipment, munitions, all of that. It's a matter of balance. There is no one answer. It's not red or it's not black or white. It's a balance you need to find between all these things.
Brigadier General Amir Avi, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.